Hi everybody, hope you're well. I had a question through and it was when applying to teams, how are some of the ways you can improve your chances. So I'm mainly going to talk about the actual application to a team. So a couple of things that I'm going to talk about is make sure to check the advert. Do they have a formal application? Be ready for rejection. Check your spelling, your grammar. Do not be generic and avoid yes and no answers. So there are lots of teams out there. There are competitive teams, there are laid back teams, there is lots of variety out there. And teams can have various ways that players apply to them. Some will have formalised systems of set questions that they ask everybody. Some will just interview you through PM. Some teams might ask you to do a trial block on top of that. So some of the things you need to be thinking of when you apply to a team is, are you suitable? Okay, so you could really want to be in this team, but you might not meet any of the criteria on their advert. Now in situations like that, there's two things you can do. You can either not apply at all, okay, or you can apply but ask them, that you basically just say to them, you're just looking for feedback and you want to see if there's a way you could improve to potentially be, good enough in future. So in those situations, I think it's sort of very much a case of being ready to accept some critical feedback. And critical doesn't mean it's negative. It's usually it's asking ways to improve, okay? And there's nothing wrong with improving. And I remember when I first started, I had to do that. I applied to teams. Some never ever got back. Some did, and no. And obviously, I knew nothing about the game yet. So having a good understanding of certain areas of the game is going to be very key. Obviously with competitive teams, it's going to be blocking, fillers, things like that. So in terms of actually writing the application, if you get a formal application, there's a couple of things that I think are really important. Obviously, check your spelling and your grammar. I know there are people there who English isn't their first language, and that's okay. You can say that English isn't your first language, but you're trying your best. You can say, if you're somebody that maybe suffers from dyslexia, that's fine. Just, you can say it if you want, or just state that you have problems with writing, and, don't ask them not to be too harsh about it, okay? You can do that. But be careful how you say it, okay? Just don't tell them they can't judge you in any shape or form, because technically whenever you get an application, they are going to judge the application, okay? So try, and if you can, use an online spell checker, or maybe ask a friend who's quite good at checking spelling and grammar. Alternatively, this is an alternative. Always read your application at least once again before, once you finish writing it, read it again and check it, okay? Because you'll be amazed on what you'll pick up. And one of the other things is do not be generic. So, for example, this ties into avoid yes no answers. Okay, this is just me asking a really random question. So if I asked, do you know what a golden apple is? Okay, as one of my application questions, and you answered yes. Yes is so generic. I can't actually tell if you do or you just said yes rather than no. Okay. Now, what a much better answer would be yes, it is a black market item used for the customization of horse coats. Now, that already is a much more impressive answer, and it's probably going to get their attention more, okay? So whenever you write your answers, try and make sure that they're concise, so they're not 10 lines long, okay? But that they make their point. They show that you know what you need to know. And if it's a case that you don't understand the question, okay, ask them to explain it, that you're not clear on what they're asking you, okay? That is completely fine. And obviously you don't need to give personal information. Now, one of the things that I have on some of my applications is give a short description of yourself. Now, that's a very open-ended question. You could say, I'm an enthusiastic, hardworking individual who really loves to collect golden apple coats, and I'd love to be part of your team for blah, 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 XYZ reasons, okay? Somebody else might write, I'm a 16-year-old girl from the UK and I like to play horse in my spare time. Now, one person is fine maybe with sharing personal information like that. Another person maybe isn't. And you're not obligated in any way to give anybody personal information. You don't have to give them your name, your age, where you live, or anything like that. What you answer is up to you, okay? So obviously, if a team tells you you have to tell us what age you are and you have to tell us where you live and things like that, you don't, okay? Some teams can have things where they only allow adults into their teams, and they probably will ask your age, but you're not really under any obligation to give your age at all. So when you write your application, make sure to be specific. Another thing is just an example. If somebody asks you, how do you train, or sorry, how do you bold this, the gallop skill, for example, and you say, I do training and competitions and rides that bold the gallop skill. That's too generic. It doesn't actually tell me what rides you would do. It doesn't tell me what training you would do, and it doesn't tell me what competitions you would enter. So it's so generic that I can't actually tell if you know how to bold the gallop skill. So whenever you answer, you want to say the length, the type of the ride, for example, what type of training, and what type of competitions, and why. So if you can basically show that you know what you're talking about, you'll immediately score more points, okay? They can't give you any points if you don't, sort of put them in there, okay? Teams will probably, teams that get a lot of applications, just for example, are going to have to score them somehow. So they're probably going to look at 2 application forms, and the one that was very, very generic and unspecific is going to get less than the one that obviously knows what they're talking about. Now, if you don't understand or you're not too sure on certain game things, there's nothing wrong in asking for feedback, saying, where did I fall down on this, where can I improve, what do I need to go learn? And some teams, I'm sure, I'll be happy to give you feedback. Some won't answer ever, okay? That is just the way some teams are. And it's just, you have to sort of, expect it, really. I think, to be honest, people should expect rejection more than acceptance in some cases. But just know that it's not something you can't work on, it's not something you can't improve on, and, do better. Always can improve. Anybody can. And it's just something you have to do over time. Obviously, it's not an overnight thing. And obviously some teams, if they see that if your application really impresses them, okay, but maybe you're just lacking that wee bit of knowledge, maybe in terms of bluffing a little bit, maybe there's a couple of things you're just looks a wee bit like you don't maybe know completely what you mean. Some teams will see you as a project. In other words, they think, should we spend time to train this person up to the level that will be right for the team? And some will do that, some won't. Some of them might actually suggest you go and find a team that will bring you up to that level and then come back to them at a later point when you're more experienced. But that's a good thing in a way, because it's gaining experience. And obviously you're going to have good experiences, you're going to have bad experiences. You're going to learn from them. So really, whenever you're doing your written application to a team, you want to make sure you have everything in place and you're showing why you're right. Be yourself, okay? Don't try to be anything you're not, but do sell yourself, okay? Because I guarantee you there'll be a lot of, there'll be a wide variety of applications. Sometimes you get very bad applications, sometimes you get very, very good applications. And I'd like to see, this is just me personally, but I think it's maybe true with other teams, maybe they're taking in candidates and that. Whenever I read an application and I see that the person spent time on it, they've obviously put a lot of effort into the application, it immediately says to me that this person's more likely to put effort in the actual team. Whereas if I get an application that has yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, or whatever, something like that they've clearly spent about 5 minutes doing, I'm immediately going to think there's less chance that they're going to put in effort. So, it's obvious quite quickly who you think would be a better candidate. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of humour too. I actually quite enjoy somebody that has a little bit of humour in their application. Not like a massive amount, but some people do. Not everybody will. Obviously, you have to be sometimes aware of who you're sending it to, because if they have no sense of humour whatsoever, you're probably not doing a good thing by being humorous. But show your knowledge. If you don't understand the context of the question you're being asked, obviously ask them to clarify, maybe ask them to explain what they're asking you. Avoid taking questions from the application and putting them in the gameplay form, and the reason for that is if the person that's looking at your application checks the gameplay form and they see that you've been asking, what are the, what's this and what's this and what's this and how do I answer this, immediately they're going to go, well, they've just taken that answer from that other player and posted it into the application. That's not going to do very good either. So there's lots of different things you need to sort of be aware of. But just do the best you can, put the time and effort in, make sure to check it, and don't be scared of rejection, okay? I know it's a horrible thing, and I hate turning players down, right? And sometimes it's literally between two people, it's the smallest thing. And it's never nice, But that's what it comes down to. And obviously, if you're aware that you're a very close candidate and that maybe you lost out to somebody else, but you were very close behind them, just maybe ask, how can I get as good as that or better? Okay, always aim for better. Okay. But never give attitude. Like if you apply to a team and they say, I'm sorry, but obviously if they're really rude to you, maybe I can understand if you give them attitude. But if they're polite about it and they're just, they're trying to do it nicely, if you give them attitude, that's immediately going to be, you're written off for life. They'll probably never accept an application of you again. So be aware of that too. Don't be too pushy. That's another thing I think, that sometimes people can be too enthusiastic to the point where they're like, can I start now? And you're like, I haven't even got to read your application yet. Give them time to read it and ingest it. But obviously, if you're still waiting 2 weeks down the line, I think you maybe need to chase them a wee bit. Well, not chase them, but, ask, have you thought about my application? So that's just a couple of things. I can't think of anything else massively now, but if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments or message me. Alright guys, I hope you had a lovely day, and I hope this was helpful, bye bye.